Hey y'all, hey, it is T and I am back, and today I am talking about another sensitive subject. And what are we getting into today? We are talking about credit today. And I wanted to talk about credit because there's so many misconceptions and myths kind of out there. And I think we have been conditioned that we require credit, that we have to have credit to live. And I wanted to kind of delve into that to see some variations, whether we should be expanding our minds in that area. And I wanted to talk about three things that I have heard the majority of my life. And the first one is that no credit equals bad credit. I wanted to talk about that one because I'm sure you've heard it too. The second one I've heard often is, I'm not dating anyone that doesn't have good credit. I wanted to talk about that. And then the third one is that good credit equals good finances. And I really wanted to talk about that. I'm actually going to use my personal score as an example on that one. And I just wanted to talk about credit. I wanted to talk about how we view credit and how we use it. So here we go. First off, before I get into the topic, I wanted to say, if you are new to my channel, welcome. And if you are not new, welcome back. My name is T. I talk about a little bit of everything, but I do have a lot of finance videos because I just enjoy finance related topics. So today we are talking about credit, and I'm just going to go into the first thing that I hear or have heard the majority of my life, and that is that no credit equals bad credit. And I want to tie that into how we can't live without credit. Okay, so let's get into this no credit equals bad credit. I have heard that, I would say, the majority of my life. But I need to point out, no credit and bad credit are two different things. Do they both serve or have their challenges? Absolutely. But they are not the same. They are not the same. And what I did is I interviewed someone that's very close to me to explain, this person works in property management, has worked in property management on several properties, both in and out of state. This person has worked in every element of leasing, from being a leaser to being in property management. So I wanted to ask some questions about this that directly relate to getting an apartment or a place to live. And so I asked some specific questions, and I'm going to just go through the answers that I have here. And my first question was, have you ever in your career rented to someone with no credit history? Emphasis, not bad credit, but no credit. Her answer was, no credit is not an issue. It's come up several times within my career. It's bad and negative items that trigger the system that we use to run your application. The systems I have used are programmed to look for negative items. And I was really stunned by that, because honestly, I have kept good credit thinking that if something catastrophic happened, maybe I wouldn't be able to rent somewhere. Now, is it going to be more stringent? Probably. But anyway, I'll get into more of the questions. Would you, in those instances, require a higher deposit or request to review bank statements, considering that they don't have a credit history? Her answer was rarely, but possibly in circumstances of someone with little job history or on a fixed income. Typically, though, the highest deposit would be for 1 month. This is only related to the places that she's worked, so I want to stress that. We see people who just entered the U.S. with no established credit history pass the standard approval all the time. So this is someone that's just come here, no credit history whatsoever, and they've passed the standards for approval. Now, that's what that drives home my point that no credit and bad credit are two different things. The negatives are what are triggering the rejection. But of course, you have to have an established job history and all that good stuff so they know that you can pay the rent. The third question I asked was, well, how does that work? Are there other items that the system is looking for? And she stated the system uses a rental factor score. That is not a FICO score, as I thought, although it does run what is on your credit report if you have one. It's a rental factor score. And it considers credit history. It basically scans for negative items on your credit report. And whether you have a negative rental history. So that would be evictions, if you have any evictions on your record. And so I asked, well, how is negative rental history defined? Do you mean evictions on your record? And her answer was, it is not only evictions. I think that is the most common misconception that people have. The system can see not only whether you have been evicted, but whether someone filed an eviction on you, even if it's been dismissed. That was a very important thing. It will still come up in their system records regardless. And many people don't know that. And they argue, well, it was dismissed. She said, however, the system will still reject based on the filing because we are trying to mitigate our risk. Very interesting little tidbit there. And so I asked, so will the system pull up filings and evictions for an unlimited number of years? How far back does it go? She states it varies by property, but most of the places where I have worked, again, this is stressing, this is only where she has worked, have gone back 7 years, but I have worked at a couple of properties that go back 10. So it is for a period of time that they're going back. And then the last thing I asked was, were there anything else, like any other items that she would want to mention? And she said, I would add that average credit is usually okay, but it must be average and no negatives, because you can have a lower score but not have anything negative on your report. She was like, so if your score is in the 600s, but you have no charge-offs, collections, late payments, etc., you still have a chance to qualify. And I wanted to add that so people don't automatically think that because their score is lower, they're going to be disregarded. The second thing she added was asking questions beforehand and on an application won't help you. And this is because of consumer protection. Office staff is generally not told what the thresholds are for approval. So, and she said this is to deter steering or possible discrimination of applicants. She said that she usually has the conversation because she'll tell the person, well, only you know what is on your credit. Only you know what negative items are going to show up here. You know if you've been filed on before. You know these things. So keep those things in mind before applying. And then she stated that for every place that she's worked, evictions were outright denial. There was no reconsideration on that. But convictions, she said that some places she's worked, convictions were a flat out denial. But other places she's worked, they actually will consider whether it was a non-violent conviction. And it generally goes back using the 7 to 10 year time frame. But she said in those instances where she's worked places that have allowed non-violent convictions, that those places will initially deny you. However, they allow you to explain why you received the charges, and they can manually approve you on a case-by-case basis. But that is not every property. Some properties, it is an automatic no. but she has worked at some properties where it was not an automatic no if it was a non-violent offense. And then lastly, she said negative items on your credit report may not be an automatic denial in some instances. She has seen applicants allowed if they pay off the debt and show proof that they paid the debt off. But that is a company to company thing. And even still, it's going to be flagged initially. So from what she has stated, you do have a chance, even if you have no credit, to have rent, like to be able to rent somewhere. And you can obviously see no credit, having no credit is not equaling bad credit in this scenario. Bad credit and negative items flagging are red flagged in their system. Having no established credit history does not flag their system. They may ask you additional questions regarding income and employment, but it is not an automatic flag as those negative items are on your credit report. So that was just something that I wanted to share. So I think we can kind of surmise that no credit, which I've always known, no credit and bad credit are two different things. No credit means you have not established credit. It is much easier to establish credit, even if it's just getting a small credit card and paying that off to build up over time, than it is the years that it takes to fix bad items. I mean, unless you're going to credit repair, and I'm not a credit repair specialist, so I have no idea about that, but the process is usually harder. It's more difficult. So that was the first thing. Okay, guys, the next topic is really about credit and relationships and how I've heard people say they will not date anyone without good credit. And every time I hear that, the first thing that comes to my mind is, what about the people that don't use credit? And I think that we are so, like I said, we're so conditioned to think that we have to have credit that we completely dismiss someone that does not have any credit. And believe it or not, I know this is going to sound like impossible or the person has to be rich to do this. But there are people that pay for everything they get in cash. It actually used to be a thing. I talked to my dad about this. He was like, yeah, that used to be how it was. Like you weren't even trying to get credit. You were just trying to save and pay for whatever you were getting. So it is not I feel like that shouldn't be an automatic dismissal if a person has no credit. Now, bad credit. Now, I could see the statement being, I don't want to date anyone with bad credit. I could see that. But to just say, I will only date someone that has good credit, I think that one would require a little more digging because you don't know how the person's living. For all you know, they've saved all their lives and they've bought stuff in cash. They've never used credit. They've, and believe me, people have bought homes in cash. People have bought homes in cash. They've bought cars in cash. I feel like it's so many times I hear people and it's almost like that is impossible to do. Am I saying it may be the most flashiest, nicest car? In some instances, yes. In some instances, people will save forever to get the car they want. I've seen it. And then in some instances, no. It's not going to be like, like a Mercedes or something like that. It's not going to be that, but they will have paid for their car in cash. I know with the home prices the way they are now, it's less likely that people are paying for homes in cash, but it still happens. It still happens because I think sometimes we get caught up in our location in the United States and we think that it's impossible for people to buy homes in cash. But there are still these little small towns, these little pockets of America where a home can be bought for like $80K, like stuff like that. I know it's far-fetched, but it happens. So I think we should be asking more questions when it comes to dating. It shouldn't just be, do you have a good credit score? Maybe, do you have bad credit? Or if they say they don't have any credit at all, maybe ask more questions. Like, well, then how do you get things? How do you do things? They may surprise you with what they've been able to do. Honestly, I haven't run my credit in 5 years. That lets me know that I could probably do without credit if I was diligent enough. If I was diligent enough. But I used credit to get the home that we live in. I used credit to get the car that I drive. So I use credit. So I don't want this to come off like I'm anti-credit, because I'm obviously not, because I have a score. And I protect my score. So I'm not anti-credit. I'm just more into thinking about things outside of the box, because like I said, that conditioning sets in where you think, oh, there's no way that anybody could be living any kind of decent life if they don't have credit. And that just simply is not the case. It's more rare, but it's not a absolute total flat line. This is how it is. It's not like that. And I wish people would ask more questions rather than just cut somebody off before asking those additional questions. You may be surprised. And the last portion of my video today is good credit equals good finances. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It does not mean that. And I'm going to actually show my own score for this example. Now, I have what most would consider pretty good credit. Some would put it in the excellent range. But there are times where I did not have really good credit. And don't worry, I'm not worried about this, because there's going to be no displaying of any personal data. And also, all my reports are under lock and key. They are frozen. So I'm not worried about any personal breach of data or anything. I wanted to show what my credit looks like now. And then I'm going to go back into my historical data of where I was when I had debt still. Like, I had more than just the house debt. And I want you to see what that looks like in comparison, which is going to be shocking. And then I'm going to show you what my credit looks like if I were to max out all of my credit cards. And that's going to give a kind of a little insight into somebody being able to still have a fairly okay score, good even by today's standards, but be in a financial hole. So let's look at this credit score. So these are my current scores, the most commonly used versions. You'll see the mortgage, you'll see credit card, you'll see auto, and then you'll see the newest score, FICO 10. And these are all variations that are commonly used right now in the industry. They are different, they vary. Okay, I'm going back in the X files now. I can only go back to 2021, but it's gonna have to do. I had the student loan left at this time. As you can see from these scores, it is very similar. I had slightly lower mortgage scores. I had slightly lower scores in other little areas, but for the most part, I still had excellent credit, but I had a lot more debt at this time. So now let's look at, if I were to max out my credit cards, what my credit would look like. I'm going to do a simulator. All right, now look at this. Now here we see I am going to enter that I've maxed out my credit cards. Yes, I am losing 140 something points, but my credit is not destroyed, but I can tell you what, my finances would be destroyed. Like, would be destroyed. I would be in astronomical debt, but it doesn't look horrible. That's the point I was trying to make with this. So guys, I know that we've gotten used to the status quo of you have to have excellent credit and you have to have to be able to get anything you want, and that, you know, you can't live without credit. But I just wanted to show examples and give a broader thought of the fact that you can survive without credit. The proof is in the fact that you know people with horrible credit that have places to live and cars to drive. Now, is it going to be the most excellent life? Maybe not. But the point is that having no credit or not utilizing credit does not mean that you are destitute. It just means that you chose a different path. You chose not to use debt, because regardless of what anyone says, a credit score is a measure of how well you handle debt. That is the actual definition of a credit score. So some people choose not to even partake in any debt. It's a personal choice. Like I said, I use credit. I know that credit can be leveraged in ways to help you. So I'm not saying I'm anti-credit. I just want to broaden how we view people who opt to not use credit, because it is a viable thing. It is a real thing. And so that was my hope with this. And to also show that just because you have a high score or you have a score that's acceptable. I mean, if I told someone I had one of those scores was like 730 or 725, 730. If I told somebody I had a 730 score, they wouldn't think like, oh man, you got horrible credit. You know, it's not the best credit, but they wouldn't think I had horrible credit. But I would be drowning in debt in that scenario. I mean, drowning in debt. So there's different viewpoints to things, and I just wanted to kind of broaden your thoughts surrounding credit, and to also open your eyes that there are methods like manual underwriting for mortgages, saving for a used vehicle, saving for an actual home, for the whole home. Those things are viable options. They're not commonly used options, but they truly are available. They truly are out there. So that's what I hope to get across in this video. I hope that you got something out of this. And I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.